When the tide kisses the shore, hold on to me.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for starters, I am so excited. It is fall. If you can tell, I'm wearing scarves now and long sleeves, so this is just like my element. I love fall. It's so exciting for me because like I love fashion and dressing up and things like that, and I feel like fall gives you all the time to layer, and I'm just like so excited that it's here. Anyways, today's video is actually a story time video, and this happened to me all the way back from June and then ended, I want to say like a week ago, and it dealt with my phone, and I thought you guys would be interested in hearing about this because it's just, phones are so annoying when they break, and this is kind of like a mini rant in a way. So if you are interested in hearing this story time, then definitely keep on watching. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys some back history on this story. So for starters, my very first phone company that I ever went with was T-Mobile, and I had them from high school all the way up until 2011. So it was like a long time that I was with them. And the thing is, the reason why I actually stopped staying with T-Mobile was because they started adding like these extra service charges. Like I remember looking at my bill and seeing like having to pay for an extra $40 for some type of tax or something crazy they had put on there. And I remember calling them and they were trying to explain it to me, and in my mind I was just thinking, alright, now's the time for me to leave. So a few months after I had my son, me and my husband decided to switch carriers, I guess they call that, or phone companies, and we changed to Sprint. And honestly, I love Sprint. Like, I know there's some people who feel, and my husband actually feels like this because he's out more than I am, so he kind of can understand like drop calls and things like that, especially where we live. But to me, I love Sprint. Everywhere I'm at has either Wi-Fi or good signal, so to me, I'm good with Sprint. I love their plans, and on top of it, I love the price. So you can't beat that. You will never see me going to Verizon because frankly, I feel like it's too expensive, and especially with I think they don't have any like unlimited plan. I'm not about that life right now. So me and Sprint are good to go probably until I die. Back in college, I had a BlackBerry. I even had one of those Razor phones. But when I switched over to Sprint, I had decided to get iPhone. And honestly, I don't know why I switched from an iPhone. I loved iPhone, my iPhone at least. I had an iPhone 4 back then. It was amazing. I didn't have any problems. It was just a really good phone. But I remember when it was time for me to upgrade around 2013, I was talking to my sister and she had a Galaxy. And this was around the time, I want to say it was the Galaxy 4? Yeah, it was the Galaxy 4, and it had came out and she was telling me how amazing it was, how the camera quality was great. And I'm into vlogging, especially back then more than now, but I vlogged everything I did. So instead of bringing like my big camera, I was able to just take my phone and go around and vlog, and to me it worked amazing. So that's the reason why I wanted to get the Galaxy S4, because people were talking about the camera quality and how it was so much better than the iPhone. They lied. But anyways, I ended up getting the S4. It worked great for a couple months, and then I think I dropped it in laundry detergent, and don't ask. And then on top of dropping it in that, I also ended up dropping it, period. And then on top of that, I ended up just dropping it in general. And then on top of all of that, when I take a shower, I always have the phone in the bathroom with me. And yes, I know it's bad, you know, whatever, it's the humidity, you shouldn't have it in there, but I always have my phone in there, and for some reason it fogged up the camera on my S4. And I could not take pictures, I could not vlog. It was just always looking like I was in a fog, and it never cleared up. So that was when I decided it was time for me to upgrade again. And around that time, it was the S6, and iPhone 6 had been out for a while, but the Galaxy S6 was just coming out. So when I went to upgrade, it was like a choice between either one. And I remember just going in the store and really like thinking like, which one should I get, and going and looking at the cameras and, you know, testing them out in the stores. And of course that's the worst place I feel like now to test them out, because they have all these bright lights and everything. So of course no matter what camera you're going to pick up, it's going to be amazing. Being the smart person that I am, instead of going with my gut and going with the iPhone 6, I ended up getting the Galaxy 6. This is a phone that I've had since 2015. Yeah, 2015. It is the most annoying phone ever, but we're going to get into that later. Yeah, I've had this phone since 2015, and not this specific phone, but basically this model and everything like that. So what happened was, back in June, I went to plug up my phone, and I have a fast phone plug charger or whatever, like Galaxy S6, when you're supposed to plug it in, it should only take like an hour and it should be fully charged. So I went to plug it in and it was saying like 6 hours until fully charged, and sometimes it would have crazy hours like 12 hours, and I'm like, what's going on with my phone? Like, I don't want to be waiting that long for it to fully charge. That was not what I was into at all, especially not waiting half a day to get your phone fully charged. So I decided to go over to my local Sprint store here in Delaware, and unfortunately with Delaware there aren't too many Sprint stores. So within about, I want to say like a 50-mile radius, there's probably 2. One is inside the mall, but they don't really take care of phones that I know of, and the one by itself does. So I went to this specific like Sprint store and I walked inside, and of course, as always, it was a long line to get to someone. It's always that way at the Sprint store. It sucks. So I waited for like an hour and a half, finally got to speak to someone, showed them my phone, and beforehand, before I even got there, let me mention that, before I even got there, I actually rebooted my phone because I googled it and it said you needed to do that. I cleared off all my data and things like that, and it was still saying that amount of time. So I went in there and I spoke to the guy, and the guy was like, oh yeah, you need to reboot it, and I'm like, I already did that. And he's like, well, you need to do it again, and if that doesn't work, you need to replace the battery. So obviously I can't replace the battery because this doesn't have it where you can. It's not like a regular, like, you could take off it and put in a new battery. Like, you physically have to go to the store or send it in for someone to put in a new battery. So he told me to leave it with him for like an hour and a half, and where I used to live was about 45 minutes from this Sprint store anyway. So to leave it for him, actually he honestly wanted, I think it was like 2 hours, and I told him I lived like over 45 minutes away, so I'm not driving all the way home to come all the way back within 2 hours. So I gave him like an hour and a half. I came back and he had finished rebooting it, and he had told me it's at 99% right now. When it gets to 100, I'm going to plug it in and see if it works, and then if not, we'll have to do something else. So he had waited till it got to that 1% charge, and it honestly took like 10 minutes to get from that 99% to fully charged. And I remember thinking to myself, it shouldn't really take that long, but maybe it's just the way it is because he rebooted it. I don't know. I was thinking all these things, but of course, it should not have taken that long. So when it finished doing what it was doing and it fully recharged or rebooted itself, so in my mind I'm thinking, maybe it's just something wrong with my cord or whatever. So I got back home, plugged it in, and of course my phone was still saying like 12 hours or 6 hours with the cord that I had. So I ended up looking all over the house for cords that will go with this phone, and the only cord that will work was on my husband's old PlayStation 3, and it was the one that would like charge your controller. So that's actually the one that I use right now to charge my phone. So it brought it down back to like an hour, and I'm like, okay, great, it's fine, you know, everything's great. So this was in June. Now all the way between June, I want to say, and September, my phone was doing like weird things where it would just start to freeze and then shut off and then come back on, and as soon as it showed like that sprint sign, it would just freeze. And it would be stuck like that, and you'd go to reboot the whole thing and press all, like, because what you're supposed to do with Android, you're supposed to press this one, press those two, and press this side all at once. So once you pressed all of that, it would do the whole reboot thing and then show the sprint sign again and freeze. And it was doing that so many times to the point that it froze my phone completely one time, and I was not able to get any of my pictures and things like that off of there, which from June till, I want to say maybe July, it wasn't too many pictures that I lost, but it was still annoying and frustrating because no one wants to lose even a day's worth of pictures. So what happened was, after being frustrated and then having it like completely freeze and then start back up and then freeze again, especially if you're on the phone, it would do that too. You'd be talking for a good 3 minutes and then all of a sudden you find out you're talking to yourself. So that was pretty annoying. So then finally I decided to go back into the Sprint store again. And the thing is, I personally hate going into our Sprint store because every time you go in, it's gonna be a line, like no matter what. They literally only have 2 people working at the front, and then they'll have like a line of 10 people, and instead of trying to like make the line faster or service people in a unified way, if that makes any sense, or like a faster way, they would automatically just go one by whoever came in, which is fine. I mean, it can work that way, but if someone's coming in just to pay their bill, let them pay their bill and be about their way. Why should they wait for someone to get their phone fixed for 2 hours and then they have to pay their bill? So I went in, after 2 hours of waiting, I went up to the guy and I explained to him my situation and told him what was going on with my phone and saying how long it would take to just like reboot and it would always freeze and just, it was ridiculous. So I told him and he basically rebooted the whole thing on his own, and I told him it's gonna freeze and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. This is Sprint, you know, I know what I'm doing. And of course it froze for him. And then it finally rebooted, and then when it did, I had to put in all of my like information, my Google information, just to bring up my apps. And when I brought up my apps, it said about like, I think I had 70 something apps on there, which can kind of sound like a lot, but I have a 64, I want to say, a 64 gigabyte phone. So between that 64 gigabyte or whatever, I was only touching like 20 gigabytes. So it wasn't even getting like halfway there, if that makes any sense. So basically he told me, he's like, oh yeah, it says you have 78, so you have too many apps on your phone, and that's the reason why it keeps freezing. And in my mind, I'm like, that doesn't really make any sense, because I have a Sprint app on my phone that it kept continually dinging and telling me something's wrong with your battery, you need to change your battery. And I told him that, and I said on top of that, I said it's not even going anywhere near the limit or max capacity of that storage, so why is it even saying that? It like, you're not making any sense basically. And he's like, oh, it's like a computer, if it's full then that's the reason why it's not working. And I'm like, but it's not full, that's the thing, this phone is not full at all. So he's just basically like, oh well, I'm sorry, but you know, you just need to delete the apps that you have and bring it down to like 20. And I'm like, who in 2016 is walking around with just 20 apps on their phone? Like, I don't know anyone else who has only 20 apps on their phone. But I was just like, okay, whatever. I went home, I deleted every single app that was on there except the apps that are already plugged on there and you can't take off. And I left it with like Instagram and just Snapchat and Facebook. Yeah, those are the only 3 that I had on there that weren't part, oh, and YouTube of course, that weren't part of the ones that automatically came with the phone. And so I remember like telling myself, okay, maybe it'll work now, and then I'll gradually add one more until I know my limit. But of course, within 10 minutes of doing that, my phone shut down, completely froze. It was doing the same thing all over again. And I was so upset because I had spent 2 hours in line for this guy to tell me that. And on top of it, before I even left, I told him, I said, listen, if this doesn't work, I'll be back. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to see you again. I know it's going to work. So basically, I was frustrated. I did not want to go back. I was hoping and praying that it would just start working again. And that was in the beginning, or no, the very last week of August when that had happened. So the very last week of September, my phone decided to just shut down completely. I was in school and looked at my phone. I think I pressed like one button. That thing just went boop and it was gone. Like, couldn't turn it on, couldn't even see anything past like a white screen. It was just gone. So then I knew like there was nothing I could do. I had to go to the Sprint store. So the very next day I went, and yes, I went 24 hours without a phone. That's so crazy. So the very next day I went to the Sprint store. So after 3 hours of waiting, I finally go up to the desk, give them my phone, explain the situation to them, tell them I don't care what happens, I just don't want this phone again, I need a new phone. And the crazy thing was, I forgot to mention this as well, when I had left the very last time before, when the guy said, oh, I'll never see you again, I told him, I said, listen, I already have insurance on here. And he's like, oh, well, you know, you could have just went and called the insurance company. Yeah, so I could pay $200 to get the same refurbished phone when I could pay $200 to get out of my contract and get an iPhone? Heck no, I'm not doing that. Like, there's no way I'm going to be paying $200 when I can just have you fix the phone when it wasn't even my fault. Like, it's not water damaged. It was obviously an internal mechanical error. So I explained all of this information to them. I even told them I had been there. This was my 3rd time. I did not want to be here again. I just wanted my phone back. They had told me, oh, we had never seen your, like, basically you haven't even been here since June. Even though I went there once before to speak to the other guy, they'd say, well, we haven't logged you in or have any logs of you being here except back in June. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, because this guy told me, he even looked at my phone, he told me that I had too many apps on there and that I need to get them deleted. And they were like, well, do you know who it was? And I'm like, no, I don't know who it was, but I remember it was like an African American that had helped me. And everyone looked at each other and they were like, oh, it was Kelvin. And they were talking about how he doesn't do like a good job and things like that. And I'm like, frankly, I don't care how your employees are. I just want my phone fixed. Like, I don't care what goes on internally. Just give me a new phone. So they told me what would happen was that they were going to send for me to get a new phone, but I would have to wait like a week. Like, that was Friday. I had to wait till Wednesday, if that makes sense. So like 5 days. Which is frustrating because I didn't have a phone. And then they were like, oh, when your phone comes in, we're going to call you. And I'm like, it's kind of impossible to call me because I can't even pick up or turn on my phone. And so he was like, oh, well, how do you want me to contact you? And I'm like, well, can you email me? And he was like, yeah, I'll do that. So Wednesday rolls around and I'm like waiting for an email. It gets towards the end of the day. Finally, I use my husband's phone to call them and they're like, oh yeah, your phone was here since Tuesday. You can come in and get it. And the thing that really sucked about it was I couldn't even go by myself that time. I had to bring my son and my daughter, and it was right after school. So it was like 3:30, I think it was, and I didn't leave there till around 6:30. That's how long it took inside of that one Sprint store. And most of the time, I was just standing there waiting, basically. And honestly, I would have left, but the fact is, I know I would have still had to come back and wait again. So it was just like no point, like I had to stay. And it took so long that Sean was making friends with the other kids that were in the store. Layla was running laps around their desk. But at the end of the day, it was like I felt bad for them. Like that was the only thing they could do. I couldn't have them just sit there and wait for 3 hours. Like there wasn't even any seats inside the place. So running laps was better than me holding her, to be honest with you. So after almost 3 hours, I finally got my phone. And the annoying thing about it was I used to have a glass screen protector on my old phone. And when they gave me my new phone, they had taken it off and thrown the glass screen protector away without even asking me. I asked them about it. They were like, oh, we threw it away, but if you want, we have all of these glass screen protectors here so you can purchase your own. And I'm like, no, I already bought this one before. Why would I want to buy a new one when you just threw away the one I had? Sorry if my view changed or whatever. It's my battery dying, so I better hurry up and finish this. And then on top of all that, I ended up making friends with the girl that was in there as well. And she was talking about YouTube and Final Cut Pro and how she does videos. And I was going on about how to edit on Final Cut Pro. And she was talking about getting an iPhone mini and all this stuff. And it was to the point where the other staff members were like, oh, you need to get her number because you guys are clearly becoming friends. I'm like, this is not like a friend site. No, I'm just trying to get my phone fixed. So right now my phone is technically working. It's been working for the past 3 weeks because this is basically a refurbished phone. And yeah, but honestly, after I finish this lease, whatever thing I'm doing on my Sprint thing, I am going to be getting an iPhone. I'm not going back to a Samsung. It was the worst decision of my life. I have a Mac, so I don't even know why I decided to get a Samsung, because at the end of the day, both of the Mac and the iPhone, it's compatible and so much easier to work with. And yeah, that's what I plan on getting, in hopefully before June. I'll get an iPhone 6 because I don't want the 7, but I will never get a Galaxy again. I feel like other than Sprint's bad service, I feel like the whole main thing is the Galaxy's bad service as well, because the Galaxy phone really sucks. Like every single phone I've had has broken, it's had a problem. The only phones that I've had that really have worked well and I've had no problems with are the iPhones. And I mean, that may be different for other people, but for me, I cannot wait to go back to an iPhone. So basically, the whole gist of this story is to let you guys know, even though I love Sprint, I hate their service from their store because their service at their store sucks. And even when you go in, they even have this one guy who was sitting there and he wasn't even doing anything. Every single time I've been in there from June till now, he just sits there and on his tag it says in training, and all he does is greet people. He doesn't even pay for their phone bills or anything. So I don't know what's going on at that Sprint store, but because there isn't a Sprint store any closer anywhere else, I always have to deal with this mess from this specific Sprint store. And the annoying thing about it is everyone in there did not know how to fix phones. So it's like, if you don't know how to fix a phone, what are you doing behind the counter saying that you can fix it? Like, if that's the case, just send in my phone and give me a new one. I shouldn't have to come in there 3 times to get a new phone. And I know this sounds like, but I feel like if I'm paying my phone bill, I should be able to have a phone that at least works, especially if I have not done any water damage to it, I haven't dropped it, I have a glass screen protector, or had a glass screen protector on it, and then I even have like this protector or whatever. And I'm not gonna say I've never dropped my phone. I do accidentally drop my phone, things like that, but it's never broken or anything like that. It's all internally, so it wasn't my fault. It was more of Samsung's fault, which I do feel like Samsung has been having a lot of problems with their phones anyways, because I heard someone's phone even blew up in their back pocket, which is crazy. So yeah, that is my quick little story time / rant. I do love Sprint, I just don't like their service. And I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. And if you have had any phone problems, issues with any of the Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, whoever, let me know down below. But I hope you guys enjoyed this story. And if you had experienced any problems like this as well, definitely write them below. I'd love to hear your experience. But yeah, that's basically it. So definitely make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you'd like to see more. And of course, I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Everybody knows she's a perfect 10.